Asia's got 4.4 billion people. How are they a minority? So if you're sitting at home pondering that stuff, you better start looking at your National Socialism as being a means to an end, because ultimately that's what the crunch is about, like. So we've been born at a bit of a bad time for being European in that respect. And I think the statistic was that, you know, Asians were a third of the population of the world, Africa was a third of the population of the world, and the Europeans were a third of the population of the world. Now we're something like at 8% and going down, with only 2% of our women at fertile age. So we haven't got a big gene pool to sort of access to sprout the numbers up, you know, which is a lot of pressure on women. Certainly a lot of pressure on men, but imagine the pressure on women when they can't get a man, they can't get a man who's stable. How are they going to get a man who's stable when you've got all this? Who was the fella on the GMTV or whatever it's called? Left his family because now he's gay. How does that work? You know, people say that they've put stuff in food, but I would say that they may put stuff in food to increase estrogen levels, what have you. But they've definitely done a psychological number on them too. It's everywhere, isn't it? You know, I pretty much cocoon myself, so at least I can work on remaining sane. And when I go out and talk to people, there's a lot of people who are quite disciplined in this area, and they've come from good backgrounds, and they've come from a background of big families, understanding Christian values, European values. And when I say Christian, I don't mean today's mad LGBT tolerant Christianity. I mean, like, when you get disciplined for being bad, and you would do good and get rewarded. Like proper good, like you would be involved with things that um, were worthwhile, in the sense that, well, ultimately it goes down to a national socialistic sense, doesn't it? If we're all, if race doesn't matter, why does race matter so much? So obviously race does matter, and it matters ultimately, like, it's the only thing that matters. So why isn't it being pushed to keep, um, like, even if there was like race mixing or whatever, then if that wasn't the only thing that was promoted by governments, the only thing promoted by media, the only thing promoted by sports, the only thing promoted by this, that, and the other, you know, then you could say, oh, well, fair play. If it was European families being put on the front of banking posters and cornflake boxes and tins of beans and in the newspapers and in the adverts and in the sport and in this and in that, and there was a peppering of mixed race people, then the nation can absorb something of that, because it's very pro the people, which is what National Socialism is. How is it not? Comment section, you know where that is. So pushing the narrative of European first is something completely alien to the so-called governments that we've got. Pushing the narrative of wholesomeness, of benefiting from belonging to a nation, again, alien. So where does that leave the children growing up in this dialectic when parents have come from being brought up as children in a earlier set of values? You know, even if these people were pro-LGBT, pro-immigration, they're certainly not experts at it. They weren't brought up like that. They never had the means to understand the end, you know, the direction where it's going. They're only being given, what is it, spoon-fed, you know, because as it's ballooning, then people are reacting to be part of the cultural norm. So as the cultural norm, LGBT, immigration, you know, anti-family, like they don't want families, do they? And pro this, like pro anti-you. It's like, yes, I'm anti-me. And like the rewards are great then. See what I mean? Now all of these tests, would you believe, have been carried out in all of these fancy universities where they'll have these mice and chickens and pigeons and all these things, and they keep testing. And they go, okay, when the reward is not a boring reward, then it doesn't, you know, they don't stop coming. When it becomes a boring reward, they stop coming. They don't eat themselves to death. But when it's an intermittent reward and you give them a lot, they die. Like there's actual been studies being done on this. So they're the studies that are now, you know, you can just put them right into today's political thrust from these Epsteinite Tel Aviv crew parties who are all in power. And remember that the government itself is not, so you have a ruling party, but that doesn't mean to say that the other party is discounted at all. They're part of the government. That's what the government is, you know, in this faux democracy. Because if you're having a democracy, straight away, you're thinking, well, everyone has the right to vote, so therefore everyone's voice is heard. Well, that's not true at all, is it? It's majority rule, which is not even majority rule anymore. So these are the flim-flams, aren't they? These are the dialectics. You get one and you don't get another. You get the other, but you don't get the one. It's like yes, you've won a holiday to New York, all expenses paid, free plane ride and this, that and the other. And you go, yeah, but you'd have to pay. It's like, but you just said it's free. Yeah, it was free, but it's not now. Well, I don't want it then. Okay, well, that's fine, bye. It's like, well, what about the equity that I put into the competition? You know, it's like Unilever in Port Sunlight. So I'm sure that's Jewish, like lever. And when they set up, they had a competition for architects to design all the houses. So all of the houses, big, massive, beautiful houses for the workers, are all individual, beautiful houses, and it cost them £100 or something because that was the win for the competition. So I don't know if that works throughout all architecture, but certainly there's no architecture allowed now unless it's steel and glass and concrete, sort of a concrete mess. You know, glass has become the modernist look. Well, what have you got to learn from that? I mean, this is the thing about industry, isn't it? industries become so perfect that they can produce. Oh, that was the thing I was going to say about Massimo Baruto. Wasn't really about holding on traditions and culture, which is what he does say. But he runs a thing called, I think it's called foodforsoul.it, that he runs that. And what it is he gives an explanation about how much food there is made on the planet every year. And there's food enough for 12 billion people, but the population of the world is only 7 billion. So he's saying, if we all learned how to save food better. It was weird in China, for example, it's proper common there to throw tons of food away because most people eat out in restaurants, like business meetings, and the more food that you can fit on the table is the show of wealth. So therefore, people will aspire to, you know, look to the people who are the wealthiest, like that. They're the luckiest ones. They're the ones who you should be doing business with. So they throw massive amounts of food away, like so. So there's no shortage of food there. There's no austerity in China, mate. I was there from what 2003, 2004 when the SARS went. The first time I went, SARS came up. So this COVID-19 is old news to me. Like, I've been in communist China, getting shipped off into the Black Mountains in Mongolia and into the big army barracks and all sorts of stuff, getting, what is it, escorted by the Chinese Secret Service and sprayed down with the. It wasn't like you're seeing on the way it is now. But they handled that in 2 weeks, it was gone. So there's something more to this WTO thing. And the WTO thing is that China needs to get its money as the recognised currency for the world. So there may be a run on this silver, I don't know. But if you don't know that before 1913, the dollar wasn't the Federal Reserve dollar. Then after 1913, when the Federal Reserve Act was brought into place, the Federal Reserve Bank ran the money. But I think America had 5 different national banks, and all of those presidents were assassinated or something. They all failed anyway, but they didn't fail. They were all made to fail. So China has 5 state banks, like the Agricultural Bank, the Construction Bank, the Bank of China, and the Commercial Bank. And there's another one, I can't remember what the other one's called. But they have 5 state banks. So they're not state banks at all. They're communist banks, because China does not. China, like 60 to 80 million people died during the communist revolution or something. So the nationalists had a war with China before that in, I think, 1910 to 1919. So how many millions died there, then I don't know. Then there was the Opium Wars in 1901, so I don't know how many millions died there. Then there was the Second Opium War, because that was the Third Opium War, the Boxer Rebellion, 1901. And in 1964 was the Second Opium War, so I don't know how many millions died then. But I imagine it wasn't pretty, because the Chinese weren't allowed to use guns. But apparently, Xi'an, where all the terracotta soldiers are, is the Chinese way to say Zion. And apparently, I was reading the other day, the Dowager Empress had to travel to Xi'an to make a deal with the Jews so she could remain in power. So these deals were already done, with the, I think it's called the Invasion of the 10 Nations, because there was like 10 nations that were invading China for the right to sell opium, free market economy. So the Chinese didn't want it. And as I say, the first one was the Opium War in the 30s. 1830s. I think the 7 Year War has something to do with it as well. It was like a massive world war as well. So there's been all these, God knows how many millions of Chinese people have been caught up in war. But guess who's behind it all the time? Like, it's the same as they are in Europe. Now they're all over Africa. I mean, that country Niger is bordered by 7 different countries, and there's war in every country that borders them, but not just war within them, but the countries that border them are at war with other countries who border them. Like, it's proper, like, it's just it's how they make money, isn't it? The arms deal and arms trades, because they don't just deal arms, they're dealing all the insurances for the delivery of the arms, and where all the arms manufacturing takes place, there's all sorts of insurances there. Like, what are the premiums? Have you tried to open up a munitions factory yourself? What are the insurance premiums on a munitions factory in today's world? To sell in the African market. I mean, you might know, I don't know. This is how far removed I am from reality, because this is reality. Like, this is what's going on, and maybe they're moving into silver bullets. Is that what's going on? What's going on in Africa? Anyway, it's going to take me an absolute age to load these up, but I hope I've conveyed something of what I wanted to say. I'm no gauge of me, as I say, the Chinese astrology got me, like, when it said I'm like a cloud, I'm just here, there and everywhere and just disappear when you think you've got me. It's like, I know. So anyway, hi Littler, let's hope for a better future. National Socialism is the way forward. I'm just gonna turn this camera off now. Oh yeah.